Today I am going to talk about the evolution of the concept of childhood and the different forms of learning that were developed. With the necessary research, it is evident that there is much more history that is both interesting and necessary to know the reasons why some pedagogical models are implemented in the Colombian context and the reason for the attitudes of adults towards the idea of childhood, since over time adults have perceived childhood in a very different and drastic way. As the first part, I am going to start explaining the concept of childhood from the contributions of Clement of Alexandria, where children were understood as Christians and as true believers. They are also characterized by being simple in spirit, delicate and innocent, and they don't live with malice or resentment but shyness, which reflects fear of sin. They are also moldable. At that time, teaching was understood as the act of guiding minors towards virtue through practical morality, which helped children control their impulses. Then we have Quintiliano, who exposes that children are innocent in terms of deception, they are easier to instruct, they have like a greater vocation to imitate, and they have less capacity for comprehension and verbal expression. Here, learning occurred through surveillance process where the teacher could monitor the behavior of the students much better. On the other hand, there is the conception of childhood developed by Vives, where he highlights certain characteristics of children, such as they are always imitating, they are not capable of maintaining like lofty ideas, and they have a moldable mind. They are also weak and prone to evil, but this fragility of minor is not only like a sign of danger, but also of opportunity, since depending on what happens during childhood and the education that is received, is that what happens in the rest of the individual's life is determined. He also puts the concept of evaluation into practice, but from the perspective of observation and surveillance, in order to carry out like a classification, and uses the individualization of teaching to guide the student through the law moral. The idea was that the student felt observed by both God and the teacher. Other conceptions, such as Comenius, being to develop taking into account the learning process and intellectual formation as well as moral, we can evidence here the decrease in the degree of attention given to the religion. It is mentioned that childhood is a stage where there is a lot of receptivity, and therefore it's a very special age. In addition, the bad nature of the minor is left aside, and it is mentioned that attitudes and thoughts such as anger or revenge in children, it was not natural but accidental. Likewise, there is a development process where the sense come first, followed by the intellect and the will, and it is thanks to this that the children are transformed and strengthened. Later, Rousseau understands society as the factor that corrupts the good nature of children, and that is also important that the education that is being given is in accordance with like the level in which the child is. On the other hand, and later on, the concept of productive discipline is proposed, understanding the child as someone innocent and virtuous, who is also not bad, but it is selfish. Following this, we have Dewey's contributions, which do not describe childhood as a stage of sin or virtue, but as amoral. In addition, children will be social moral beings, and they will be happier the busier they are. In this case, the mind of children was not longer moldable, but was characterized by its plasticity. That is, the child was capable of creating like his own being through mental and physical actions. Finally, a more current concept of what is understood by childhood, and according to UNESCO, is that the child is a subject of law, recognizing in childhood the status of person and citizen. In addition to understanding that it is a stage of both cognitive and social, as well as emotional and physical development, there is also like a special emphasis on the active participation of children in aspects and decisions in which they are like related in some way and that may affect their lives. Another aspect to highlight is that both play and education are important issues within this stage, since the idea is to provide like a meaningful learning where curiosity and creativity develop, taking into account that each child is unique and has so much need as different abilities that must be discovered and fostered. I chose this topic because I consider it's important to understand this concept of childhood, taking into account both like the context and the time, and also the culture in which childhood is defined. Likewise, it is interesting to see this path of social change to be able to reach what it is today. Nowadays, where the physical and mental well-being of children is mainly sought, and that in addition to promoting like education and the different abilities that each one has to help like the development of society. Likewise, these topics helps to understand and also open like the way to the subject of pedagogical models that have been developed and also have been applied in society through history, which I consider makes oneself like analyze those personal experience throughout the educational process. That is how I experience like process of learning in my time at school. And likewise, more like analytical look is achieved in terms of the positive aspects and also the shortcomings that I can see in the educational institution in which I have been.